Soho is a red light area in London, a very, old established one. And they were there marching because they were expressing that prostitution was undermining women's safety. And we said, no, we're not doing that. Among us are sex workers. We are ourselves sex workers. And your demands, for example, to call in the police to shut these establishments down or stop people, arrest women who are working on the street, is undermining the struggles that sex workers are making. And so therefore it is against ourselves. And it's also deeply racist to call in the police because, as we've been spelling out, the police are themselves racist and are likely to implement any crackdowns, first of all against women of colour and immigrant women.
The other fights against all other forms of domination other than patriarchy, like racial domination, the fight against ableism and class domination. How do you articulate this? How do you see it, and how do you fight these other forms through your fight for women's rights? Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Well, as we've been describing, we don't see these things as separate, and we are all of those things ourselves. And I was very struck. We've been doing some work on our archives, in the last year or so, and finding how visible all the different sectors of women are in the early documents and the early demands. And we've really taken that as a point of principle that women of different races and nationalities, different sexualities, immigrants and asylum seekers, women with disabilities, we come together and work out fundamentally how we're connected and how we have to find the things that we have in common, and fight this stuff together. We very much spell out what it is about our particular level of power in society as individuals and as sectors of society, what makes us particularly vulnerable to violence and discrimination. It's not that we're hiding and saying we're all the same. We're not all the same. We have different levels of power, and we work hard to spell out for ourselves how essentially we are all very connected and must move forward together. And that we've always organised that because we're very committed to being many sectors of women, to coming together to fight violence, and we incorporate everyone into what we stand for and what we demand, and that's the only way to do that. For example, we've always spelled out, we're based in a very diverse women's centre, with women fighting for other issues, focus on particular ills that they themselves are up against. For example, women with disabilities. We've always worked closely with women with disabilities. Women who are disabled are particularly vulnerable to violence. For example, if you're physically disabled, you can't run away, as a very, obvious example. If you're dependent on a carer who's attacking you, you're in this relationship with them. It's very difficult for you to get out of. And also a lot more likely to experience not only violence because you have that level of power, but also then face discrimination when you try and get help and resources to get away from that person, or to get the resources to be able to recover. And we learned a lot from Selma James, who founded the Wages for Housework campaign in 1972, and we've consulted her at various points. We value her approach and her experience. And you can really see, looking back at some of the documents as I have, there was one called Against Ourselves, Why We Refused to March Through Soho in 1981. We would not march with a feminist protest in Soho because Soho is a red light area in London, a very, old established one. And they were there marching because they were expressing that prostitution was undermining women's safety. And we said, no, we're not doing that. Among us are sex workers. We are ourselves sex workers. And your demands, for example, to call in the police to shut these establishments down or stop people, arrest women who are working on the street, is undermining the struggles that sex workers are making. And so therefore it is against ourselves. And it's also deeply racist to call in the police because, as we've been spelling out, the police are themselves racist and are likely to implement any crackdowns, first of all, against women of colour and immigrant women. And, that's one of the issues we've had with NGOs who've been just way too cozy with the institutions of the state. That women, even now, 81, 91, 40 years later, we're still up against a layer in the women's movement of women professionals and politicians who label prostitution violence by its very nature, and invite more criminalization by the state. This time, there's been a big push on a thing called the Nordic model, which is to criminalize the clients of sex workers. And it's really removing women's right to determine how they earn their money, and it takes away their autonomy to say, I know the difference as a sex worker between consenting and non-consenting sex. Non-consenting sex is rape. Prostitution isn't rape. And it's really quite outrageous that some of those women are still pressing for that in this era where poverty has so enormously increased that for many women, having no benefits, having weeks of wait if you sign on for benefits, how are you supposed to feed your kids?
Yeah.
How else are you supposed to feed your family? How are you supposed to not get evicted from your extortionate private rented accommodation, given that they've so decimated social housing? And these principles, that were established in our early years are still our guiding principles now.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, I might be lesbian, I might be black, I might even be disabled, but we all have the same fight. I think that's what we're trying to reflect. We can't compartmentalize ourselves. We are, it's not, again, it's never us and them. We are the very same women. I mean, many of us came to war because, we needed the services. As myself as a survivor of child abuse, you to have the services, to have a mechanism and somewhere to speak about what you've been through, and to understand that you're not alone and the fight is not alone, is really, it's a really key part of being able to start to rebuild your life again. So that the fact, we don't prioritize one set of demands over another. That's the root to racism. If you think your struggle and your thing is more important, and we're up against that all the time, and we're up against, as Lisa said, being told what we should be thinking about our demands. The classic again is this whole question within the end detention movement, where a certain set of NGOs decided to call for a time limit of 28 days. Totally ignoring what All African Women's Group was saying about it. They didn't want to spend 1 hour in a detention center. They wanted them closed. So it's that kind of pull all the time, because we're never sure what the agenda is of those who are making the demands without consulting us on what our fight is and what we want. And that comes down to sex, race, and class. So, those are the struggles that and I think that's the way in which WAR, as again, distinguishes itself from other anti-rape organizations, or anti-violence organizations. They'll pick and choose which bit of violence they're ready to expose this week. So if you happen to be lesbian, you might not be flavor of the month. So it's that all the time. It's that.
Can I just say very quickly, just something very quickly, which was when I found the Women's Centre with my own case. I had been to other organisations, I won't name any particular one, but quite a big one, banned me from their forum, which was an anonymous forum, because I had been, once I found the centre and I knew what my rights were, and then I knew what other women's rights were, I would go on this one particular forum and tell women what they could do if their cases was going wrong. And I was banned for telling women to write to Keir Starmer, who was at the time the Director of Public Prosecutions, if, you know, your case was going wrong, or if, you know, something had gone badly wrong. And I remember being horrified, thinking, how can you ban me for telling women what their rights are when it's all out there online anyway? It's just that some women don't know where to look. But when I found the centre and I saw, you know, it wasn't just Women Against Rape, there was the English Collective of Prostitutes, Single Mother Self-Defence, you know, a men's group, the All African Women's Group. That was when I knew I was in good hands, because I thought, you know, this is a place where we're fighting for everybody's rights, not just one sector, not just, well, you're okay, you're this type of victim, so we'll fight for you, but we won't fight for somebody else. When you know that somebody is going to fight for the person with the least rights, you know that's how you build a movement, and that's how, you know, we end up winning the things that we win, not by compartmentalizing, well, you know, you're one person, you're another, your struggle is different. Our struggles are all the same. Even with the differences between us, our struggles are the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we work really hard to understand what we describe as each other's struggles. You know, it is one struggle, but we also work really hard to understand each other on a very deep level, so that we can broaden our perspective as individuals, you know, and make it a more inclusive and fundamental set of demands which will help all of us.
In the next part.
That's an essential part of what any men's network can do, which is to really take the leadership of the women, you know, as we are on the front line with it, rather than to come up with a set of demands that they impose on us.